I found the love of my life. After years of being invisible in my own family, Jake was everything I had dreamed of. And our wedding plans meant the world to me. Growing up as the forgotten child while my sister Amanda basked in the golden spotlight had shaped my entire existence. But I never imagined my own mother would have the audacity to ask me to cancel my wedding for Amanda. What happened next shocked even me. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from. And hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up to family for your own happiness. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in Seattle, it was clear from an early age that my sister Amanda was the golden child. Our parents, especially my mother, made no attempt to hide their favoritism. I can still remember my 10th birthday when my parents forgot to buy a cake while just 3 months earlier, Amanda had received a lavish party complete with a bounce house and professional entertainment for her birthday. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. When I made the honor roll, my parents would nod and say, "That is nice, Sadie." But when Amanda brought home even average grades, they would celebrate as if she had won a Nobel Prize. My mother would proudly display all of Amanda's mediocre artwork on the refrigerator, while my award-winning science project gathered dust in the garage. Sports competitions were particularly painful. I can count on one hand the number of my track meets my parents attended, despite being a state qualifier 3 years in a row. Meanwhile, they never missed a single one of Amanda's soccer games, even when they were hours away. My mother would cheer so loudly for Amanda that other parents would give her annoyed looks. Amanda herself was quick to take advantage of this preferential treatment. She knew exactly how to manipulate our parents, particularly our mother. She would put on a sweet, innocent act around them, but when we were alone, she would gloat about her special status. "Mom will always take my side," she would tell me when we argued. "Do not even bother trying." The dynamic between our parents was clear. My father was more passive, often seeming uncomfortable with the obvious favoritism, but never standing up to my mother about it. Mom was the driving force behind the preferential treatment, constantly singing Amanda's praises, while finding fault with almost everything I did. By high school, I had developed coping mechanisms. I threw myself into academics and worked part-time jobs, partly to build my college fund, and partly to stay away from home. When college acceptance letters arrived, I deliberately chose a university across the country, desperate for some distance from the toxic family dynamic. Those 4 years of college were healing for me. I made genuine friends who valued me for who I was. I excelled in my business program and landed a great job at a marketing firm in Chicago after graduation. I had built a life for myself far from my family's influence, and I was finally starting to feel confident in my own skin. That is where I met Jake. He joined our firm 4 years ago as a graphic designer, and we were assigned to the same project team. There was an immediate connection between us. Jake had this way of really listening when I talked, making me feel like what I had to say actually mattered. It was a novel experience after a lifetime of being interrupted or ignored. Our relationship developed naturally. Coffee breaks turned into lunch dates, which evolved into dinner and eventually weekends together. Jake was creative kind, and had this infectious laugh that could brighten my darkest moods. More importantly, he was perceptive. He noticed how I would tense up whenever family phone calls came, how I would make excuses to keep our visits to Seattle brief. "Your parents do not seem to see how amazing you are," he observed after our first holiday visit. "And your sister seems to actively compete with you for attention." Having someone acknowledge the dynamic I had experienced my whole life was validating. Jake encouraged me to set boundaries with my family, and reminded me that I deserved respect and consideration. With his support, I started standing up for myself more during family interactions, though my parents, especially my mother, were resistant to this change. After 3 years together, Jake proposed during a weekend hiking trip to our favorite spot overlooking Lake Michigan. It was perfect, just the two of us, with the sunset painting the sky in brilliant colors. We decided on a fall wedding the following year, giving us plenty of time to plan the celebration we both wanted. When I called my parents to share the news, their response was predictably lukewarm. "Oh, that is nice," my mother said before immediately changing the subject to Amanda's recent promotion. My father offered a brief congratulations before handing the phone back to my mother. Amanda, when told, seemed supportive on the surface. "Wow, getting married. That is big," she said. But she could not resist, adding, "I am surprised. Jake did not want something more lavish for the proposal. Thomas says when he proposes to me it will be unforgettable." Thomas had been her boyfriend for all of 3 months at that point. Despite their underwhelming reaction, Jake and I were excited to plan our future together. We had no idea that our happiness was about to become a battleground. With our engagement official, Jake and I dove into wedding planning with enthusiasm. We secured a beautiful venue and historic converted barn outside Chicago with stunning grounds for an October ceremony. We chose navy and burgundy for our colors, reflecting the fall season we both loved. Save the dates went out 9 months in advance, giving our guests, including family, flying in from the West Coast, plenty of time to arrange travel. Just 2 weeks after we sent our save the dates, my mother called me, bubbling with excitement. "Amanda is engaged. Thomas proposed last night at the Seattle Space Needle. Isn't that wonderful?" I was genuinely surprised. Amanda and Thomas had only been dating for 6 months. And from what she had told me, their relationship seemed casual. Nevertheless, I congratulated her and asked about their plans. "They are thinking of a fall wedding too," my mother gushed. Amanda has always loved that time of year. A small alarm bell rang in my head. "Mom, you know Jake and I are getting married this October, right? The date has been set for months." "Well, yes," she said, her voice cooling noticeably. "But I am sure you could be flexible if needed. After all, your sister has always dreamed of an autumn wedding." That conversation was just the beginning. What followed was a series of increasingly unreasonable requests, all designed to accommodate Amanda at my expense. A week later, my mother called again. "Sadie, Amanda was telling me she wants navy and burgundy for her wedding colors. She has had that color scheme picked out since high school. Would you mind changing yours, maybe to green and gold instead?" I reminded her that our invitations, which included our color scheme, had already been ordered. "Well, could you cancel the order? Amanda is really set on those colors." Then came the venue issue. "Amanda called that beautiful barn you booked. But they are fully booked for the season because of your wedding date." "She is devastated," my mother lamented. "Would you consider giving her your date and venue? You and Jake could always find something else. Or wait until spring." I was flabbergasted. "Mom, we put down a non-refundable deposit. We have guests who have already booked flights. No. We cannot just give up our venue." The pressure intensified when my parents came to visit Chicago 3 months before the wedding. Over dinner at our apartment, my mother brought up another suggestion. "Your father and I have been thinking," she began, stirring her coffee. "We had set aside some money to help with your wedding. But since you and Jake are both working good jobs, we thought maybe you would not mind if we redirected that money to help Amanda with her wedding. She and Thomas are just starting out, and you know how Amanda has always dreamed of a big celebration." Jake, who had been quietly seething throughout this visit, finally spoke up. "With all due respect, that seems incredibly unfair to Sadie. We have budgeted based partially on that promised contribution. To redirect it now would leave us in a difficult position." My mother looked affronted. "I am just trying to help both my children. Sadie understands family priorities, don't you, dear?" Before I could answer, Jake took my hand under the table and squeezed it supportively. I found my voice. "Actually, Mom, I was counting on that help. Jake and I both work hard, but weddings are expensive. I think it would be unfair to change the plan now." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, but the subject was temporarily dropped. However, I could tell this was far from over. The situation came to a head during a family dinner, when Jake and I flew to Seattle for a weekend. Amanda and Thomas joined us at my parents' house, and immediately the evening revolved around their relationship and wedding plans. Midway through dinner, Amanda clinked her glass dramatically. "I have an announcement to make," she said, her eyes shining. "Thomas and I are expecting. I am 2 months pregnant." My mother shrieked with joy, jumping up to hug Amanda. I'm going to be a grandmother. This is the best news. My father beamed proudly, and everyone was caught up in the excitement. Everyone except Jake and me, who exchanged wary glances. This is why we need to move up our wedding plans, Amanda continued. I want to get married before I start showing. But we are having so much trouble finding the right venue and vendors on short notice. My mother turned to me, and I could see the request forming before she even spoke. Sadie, in light of this wonderful news, I need to ask you something important. Would you consider postponing your wedding until next year? Just until after Amanda has the baby and gets married? It would mean the world to your sister. The table fell silent. I stared at my mother in disbelief. You want me to cancel my wedding, which is happening in less than 2 months, with all the non-refundable deposits paid, guests confirmed, and arrangements made so Amanda can use our date? When you put it like that, it sounds selfish, my mother replied with a frown. This is about family, Sadie. Your sister is having a baby. This is a special time for her. And my wedding is not a special time for me, I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Of course it is, but you can get married anytime. Amanda needs to get married before the baby comes. Surely you can understand that I looked to my father for support, but he stared down at his plate, avoiding eye contact. His silence was as hurtful as my mother's request. Jake, normally diplomatic, could not contain himself. I cannot believe what I am hearing. You are asking Sadie to completely derail our wedding, lose thousands of dollars, and disappoint all our guests just so her sister can have what she wants. Again. This is family business, my mother said coldly. No offense, Jake, but you would not understand the complexities. I understand perfectly, Jake replied, standing up. I understand that Sadie has been asked to sacrifice her happiness for Amanda her entire life, and that stops now. We are not canceling our wedding. Period. I stood up beside him, shaking with a mixture of hurt and anger. We are leaving now. Thank you for dinner. As we walked out, I heard Amanda call out, "See, she always makes everything about herself." The drive back to our hotel was quiet, both of us processing what had just happened. It was the most blatant example yet of how little my feelings mattered to my family compared to Amanda's. And this time they had gone too far. Back in our hotel room, I finally broke down. Years of suppressed hurt came pouring out as Jake held me. How could they ask that of me? How could my own mother think so little of my happiness? Because they are used to you giving in, Jake said gently. They expect you to sacrifice for Amanda. Because that is the pattern they established your whole life. My phone was buzzing non-stop with messages. My mother demanding we return and discuss this rationally. Amanda accusing me of ruining her special announcement. My father's lone text simply said, "Your mother is upset. Call her." Not a single message acknowledged how hurtful their request had been. Not one considered my feelings. I silenced my phone and spent the night talking with Jake about what to do next. By morning, I had decided to call my best friend Taylor, who had known me since college, and understood my family dynamic. They did what Taylor exclaimed when I explained the situation. "Oh, hell no. Sadie, this is beyond ridiculous." "You know that, right?" "I know, but they are still my family," I said weakly. "A family that has consistently put your needs last," Taylor reminded me. "Look, I have watched this pattern for years. Your sister announces something, everyone drops everything for her, and you are expected to smile and go along with it. But asking you to cancel your wedding, that crosses every line." Taylor's words hit home. "So what do? You stand up for yourself once and for all. You tell them that not only are you not canceling your wedding, but if they cannot respect your relationship and your boundaries, they do not need to be part of your celebration." The thought of uninviting my own parents was terrifying, but also strangely liberating. Jake supported the idea completely. "Your wedding day should be filled with people who genuinely celebrate our love," he said. "Not people who see it as an inconvenience to be rescheduled around Amanda's life." After careful consideration, I made my decision. This would be the line in the sand. No more being the forgotten child who sacrifices everything for family harmony. It was time they understood that their behavior had consequences. I called my mother the next morning, heart pounding but resolve firm. "Sadie, finally," she answered. I expect an apology for your behavior last night. Walking out on a family dinner was incredibly rude. I took a deep breath. I am not calling to apologize, Mom. I am calling to let you know that Jake and I will not be changing our wedding plans. Not the date, not the venue, not anything. Sadie, be reasonable. Your sister is pregnant, and I am getting married. These two events are unrelated. How can you be so selfish? This is your future niece or nephew we are talking about. This is not about the baby mom. This is about years of always putting Amanda's wants ahead of my needs. And I am done with it. What is that supposed to mean? She asked sharply. It means that I have made a decision. If you and Dad cannot respect my relationship enough to celebrate it on its own terms without comparing it to Amanda's or trying to minimize it, then I do not want you at my wedding. There was a shocked silence before my mother burst out laughing in disbelief. Do not be ridiculous. Of course we will be at your wedding. Not if you are uninvited, I said firmly. And right now that is where things stand. You, Dad, and Amanda are no longer welcome at my wedding. Her laughter stopped abruptly. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. You would exclude your own family from your wedding. What would people think? I do not care what people think. I care about being surrounded by people who love and support me on my wedding day. You have made it clear that is not you. My mother's voice turned cold. If you do this, you will regret it. Your father and I will boycott your wedding. We will not come, even if you beg us to. You cannot boycott what you are not invited to. I replied, surprising myself with my calmness. My decision is final. I ended the call as she was mid-protest. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages from extended family. Apparently, my mother had immediately started calling relatives to tell them about my unforgivable behavior. Family members took sides. My mother's sisters condemned me. My father's brother, who had always been kind to me, sent a supportive message saying he understood setting boundaries. Amanda predictably took to social media, posting a tearful selfie with a long caption about how her selfish sister was trying to ruin the most precious time in her life, and how heartbroken she was that family meant so little to me. The comments were filled with people sending her sympathy, having heard only her side of the story. My father called that evening. I had always hoped he might be the one to recognize the unfairness of the family dynamic. But his words dashed that hope. Sadie, you need to apologize to your mother and sister, he said without preamble. For what exactly? Standing up for myself? He sighed heavily. Look, I know your mother can be intense. And yes, Amanda has always needed a little extra attention. But they are your family. You only get one family. Dad, they asked me to cancel my wedding. My wedding. How can you possibly think that is reasonable? Your mother was just trying to help Amanda in a difficult situation. At my expense. Again. And you sat there and said nothing. Again. Sadie. No, Dad. I am done being the one who always has to give in. If you cannot see how wrong this is, then you are part of the problem. After hanging up, Jake and I made some difficult decisions. We contacted our venue to arrange additional security just in case my family decided to show up uninvited. We asked Taylor to take on a more significant role in the ceremony, essentially filling the best man position. Jake's parents, who had always been warm and welcoming to me, reached out to offer extra support. The weeks leading up to the wedding were stressful. I had moments of doubt. Late one night I confessed to Jake. Am I making a huge mistake? They are my family after all. Jake took my hands in his. Family should lift you up, not tear you down. The fact that you are even questioning whether you deserve to have your own wedding day be about you shows how much they have distorted your perspective. You are not making a mistake. You are finally valuing yourself. His words strengthened my resolve. We continued with our plans, determined to have the celebration of our love that we deserved. The morning of our wedding arrived bright and clear, a perfect October day. Getting ready with Taylor and my closest friends, I felt a mixture of joy and sadness. Despite everything, there was still a hole in my heart where my family should have been. Having second thoughts, Taylor asked, catching me staring out the window. No, not about Jake. Just wishing things could have been different with my family. The door is not closed forever, Taylor reminded me. But today is about you and Jake and the life you are building together. Focus on that. She was right. I finished getting ready, pushing thoughts of my family aside. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock. At 1:30, as I was making final preparations in the bridal suite, there was a knock on the door. Taylor opened it cautiously, then turned to me with surprise. "It is your dad," she said quietly. My father stood in the doorway alone, looking uncomfortable in his suit. "Can I come in?" I nodded, speechless. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like I always imagined you would on your wedding day. What are you doing here, Dad? Where is Mom?" "Your mother and Amanda decided not to come," he said, looking down. "But I could not miss my daughter's wedding. I just could not." He took a step toward me. "Sadie, I owe you an apology. A lifetime of apologies, really. I have spent years watching your mother and sister treat you unfairly, and I said nothing. I convinced myself it was easier to keep the peace than to stand up for what was right. I was wrong." Tears filled my eyes. "Why now?" "Because when you stood up to your mother, you showed more courage than I ever have. You made me see what I have been doing all these years by staying silent. I am ashamed, and I am sorry." I could see the sincerity in his eyes. "Does this mean you understand why I could not cancel the wedding?" "Of course I do. It was an outrageous request. I should have said so immediately." He paused. "I know I have no right to ask, but if you would allow me to attend your wedding, even just sitting in the back, it would mean the world to me." In that moment I saw my father clearly, perhaps for the first time. A man who had made mistakes but was trying to make amends. "Would you walk me down the aisle, Dad?" His face lit up. "Are you sure I am?" The ceremony was everything Jake and I had dreamed of. Walking down the aisle on my father's arm, seeing Jake's face light up as our eyes met, exchanging vows surrounded by friends who genuinely supported us. It all felt right. There was no drama, no competition for attention, just pure celebration of our love. Our reception was joyful and relaxed. My father gave a heartfelt toast acknowledging his failings and promising to do better. Jake's family welcomed him warmly, and for the first time I felt what unconditional family support could feel like. Jake and I spent our honeymoon in Hawaii, 2 weeks of sun, sea, and healing. We talked about the future, about the family we might create someday, and how we would ensure every child felt equally loved and valued. When we returned home, we learned through the grapevine that Amanda's wedding had been postponed due to venue issues. Later, I discovered that several family members, including my father's siblings, had declined her invitation, telling her they were uncomfortable with how she had treated me. 6 months after our wedding, my relationship with my mother remained strained. We spoke occasionally, but I maintained firm boundaries. She had yet to acknowledge any wrongdoing, still insisting I had overreacted. Amanda had her baby, a boy, and while I sent a gift, I kept my distance from her as well. My relationship with my father, however, blossomed. He made regular trips to Chicago sometimes without telling my mother. He was making an effort to know me as a person, not just as the other daughter. It was a slow process, rebuilding trust after a lifetime of feeling overlooked, but it was happening. Around our 1-year anniversary, Amanda reached out with what passed for an apology in her world. "I guess I got carried away with my wedding plans," she wrote in a text. "My wedding was not as great as I hoped anyway. Thomas's family is so boring." I did not respond immediately. Jake and I discussed it over dinner that night. "What do you think?" I asked him. Should I accept her quasi-apology? Jake considered carefully. "I think you should do whatever brings you peace. Forgiveness does not mean you have to let her back into your life in the same way. It can mean releasing the anger for your own sake." I decided to respond with kindness, but maintain my boundaries. "Thank you for reaching out. I hope you, Thomas, and the baby are doing well. I am still working through a lot of our past, but I appreciate the message." The journey of healing was ongoing. I started therapy to work through the patterns of always putting myself last. I practiced setting boundaries not just with family, but in all areas of my life. I learned to recognize when I was falling into old patterns of people-pleasing at my own expense. Our marriage grew stronger through all of this. Jake's unwavering support gave me the foundation I needed to stand firm. Together, we created a home where both of us felt valued, heard, and respected. Looking back on that painful time before our wedding, I realized it had been a necessary breaking point. Sometimes relationships need to fracture completely before they can be rebuilt in a healthier way. And sometimes the people who share your blood are not the ones who truly understand what family should mean. The most important lesson I learned was that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is essential. For years, I had been taught that putting my needs last was a virtue. Now I understood that without self-respect, you cannot build healthy relationships with others. I also learned the power of chosen family. The friends who stood by us during that difficult time showed me what unconditional support really looks like. Sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you were born into. Has my relationship with my mother and sister been fully repaired? No. But I have found peace in accepting that some relationships will always be complicated. What matters is that I no longer allow their treatment to define my worth. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. And if you know someone who might be struggling with similar issues, share this video with them. Sometimes knowing you are not alone can make all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve to be celebrated exactly as you are.